The kids on Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
Halloweenies, a Freddy Krueger podcast.
Was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
From the Consequence Podcast Network, the minds behind The Losers Club, comes a new podcast in fantasy terror.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Halloweenies, a Freddy Krueger podcast.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's an interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Are you a subscriber? Do you subscribe to this podcast? Well, if you haven't already, do hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening from. You can get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. You can also follow along on Spotify and YouTube. We do put out interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday over at Consequence of Sound. I'm Kyle Meredith, the dude in the title. Today, my guest, Lou Barlow, talking about Sebadoh this time around. I always enjoy talking with Mr. Barlow. Sebadoh, their first record in 6 years. It's called Act Surprised, and we're going to go really deep on this one. Lou calls it Sebadoh's most focused record, maybe the definitive Sebadoh album. And that has a lot to do of how they came in on the record, with, again, focus seeming to be the primary word, as you'll hear. We'll also hit some of the themes on the album: medication and opioids, conflict resolution, and just a lot of the noise that's out in the world these days. We'll also talk just a little bit about the 20th anniversary of the Sebadoh album, and get a quick update on Lou's other bands, Dinosaur Jr., what they've got planned this year. I always love catching up with him. It's Kyle Meredith with Lou Barlow of Sebadoh.
Hi, Kyle.
The new record, Act Surprised. It's a monster, man. It sounds awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. And doing it again. I did want to clear up something, because in the press release, they do use the word reunited, and maybe they just mean that in a broad sense, because, I don't know, otherwise that would mean that Sebadoh, again, wasn't a band for a minute, or was.
Yeah. I don't know. They kind of threw that thing together last minute. There was only so much I could pick through it. I mean, yeah, reunited. I mean, yeah, we never broke up. I mean, we're never going to break up. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we could take in, huge yawning hiatuses, but I don't know about hiati.
Right. Multiple hiatus?
Yes, we will be known in the end for our multiple hiati. Breaking up. I mean, we'll stop, here and there if it seems like we can't get things together, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I kind of expected. I mean, 6 years in between records is nothing these days, if you want to count the one before that. So it's,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about, it's true. I was listening to, there was a new Panda Bear record, and I was listening to that, and I'm like, apparently then I was like, wow, it was 4 years since the last one, and then I went back and looked, and like, all of his records are 4 years apart. I'm like, oh. And he's like a young go-getter. Prolific. And I'm like, wow, that's still like 4 years between records. I'm like, that's not bad.
Yeah. Well, Noah, like you though, he's also in multiple bands, of course, with Animal Collective. So once you tie it all together, I mean, it hasn't been that long since. I mean, you and I just talked last year, I believe. That was when Love Intervene came out, right? So
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's true.
Not like it has been a long time. In the meantime, since we're talking about that time. In the meantime, you've been doing these run of solo shows, and like when you were here in town, you did the Grail House and everything. It's kind of been a run of like small room and house concerts, right?
Yep.
Like, how's that been for you? I mean, do you find like a new connection? Is there something like of a reset button that comes along with that?
Oh, totally. I can't really overstate how important it's been for me to do those things. I mean, on every level, just creatively, and then like getting back in touch with people who like the music, and a lot of people, who maybe haven't seen the band for, since the 90s, because they've gone on and had kids, and like people have, it's kind of a thing, especially with like an American audience, like, once you get through your 20s and 30s or whatever, you're like, you're not on the bar schedule anymore. You're kind of like, So I was doing these kind of earlier shows, and then the people who came, I mean, maybe like 50 people tops. Maybe that was like a successful show. It'd be about 50 people, and it was just real direct, and it's like real. I don't know. It was great. I love playing acoustic anyway. So
do you try to bring any of that in now that you're back on the regular tour circuit with Sebadoh? I mean, is there a way to compromise those two worlds?
No. No. Not unless I literally. I mean, we did do a tour once that I really enjoyed. Was where I opened up the show acoustic, and then Jason did this kind of like his kind of even more aggressive kind of like duo that he and Bob did. We just had this sort of night to ourselves, and that was cool. I thought that was fantastic, but I think I was alone in that that feeling. So we haven't. That I thought was a really good way to bring it all together. But yeah, no, we're not doing that. So
probably won't have it again.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think with this new Sebadoh record, it's like I didn't even. Generally, on almost every Sebadoh record, there will always be some song that I'll do almost acoustic, and I was like, I don't even want to do that on this record. I want this to be a full. I just really felt pretty strongly of it when we did make a record. I wanted it to be a full electric record where all of us play on every track. Where I'm not trying to like make the overt like sensitive statement of tossing the acoustic song on it. I just wanted it to be like, this is because when we do play together, and it really comes together, we're just a really solid, like 3-piece rock band. And I thought that would be best to just focus on that for this record. And that's what ended up happening. So,
well, outside of that, were you guys using any like, musical touchstones for the record as far as direction?
No, I guess I was just trying to draw upon what I've thought we did well in the past, I guess, which is just the real, just really, accessing the power trio,
I mean, because at times I don't know, maybe it's Jason stuff, but it feels like it's an even heavier record, I guess, than at least Defend Yourself. And maybe that goes along with what you were just saying right there. You're trying to kind of keep it, in this cohesive, big electric sound. But at least his stuff, I mean, I don't know. His stuff sounds heavier than usual, at least when he's taking those vocals.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we kind of like, we spent about 4 weeks all together on the record, like from getting the basic sort of songs down and then just, then adding things to it. And generally especially with Jason, the only thing we added was guitar. I mean, there's no keyboards, there's no it's all just like, I was like, it's just real. What was kind of intense about it was when we kind of kicked into it. I mean, we spent a little bit more time beforehand. We spent about a week, throwing ideas around just in a room together and coming up with like what we thought the songs were going to be before we went into the studio, which is like we spent 5 days on what you would call pre-production, which is nothing, really in the scheme of things. But for us, it was kind of monumental because it really focused us, so by when we got into the studio, it's like the amount of focus was just like, it was great. So I really felt like we had this, just the instrument. We didn't spend any time like going through like cutting stuff together or editing songs or like, we just knew exactly what we wanted when we went in and laid down the basic track. So there's a real like conviction behind every performance that I'm like so grateful for. And I knew we were capable of that too. And I'm not, it's why it's like, sometimes it's worthwhile to wait around until the moment's right, because I really thought we did. Because when we came in to do it, it was like, there was just no question. Like Jason knew what he wanted. I knew what I wanted. Bob was like, his drumming was just, I almost was like, obviously the great drummer, he's played with us for a while, but I was like, whoa, what he brought to it was just so, and that's a lot of the heaviness, I think, behind it. And then we were in a studio where I was comfortable. I'd worked there before. Justin, who we'd worked with, I've known him for a long time. I've worked on several Dinosaur Jr. records with him, several solo records. So, and I knew what he had as far as amplifiers and all this other stuff. And I'm like, no, if we're in good form, this is the way it's going to be captured. And like, luckily, or that wasn't even, I don't even think there was really any luck involved. It was just finally getting this band into a really good, consistent atmosphere, good environment, and just like, letting loose,
Yeah, you can hear that, the song Leap Year, I think maybe where I hear that the most, what you're talking about. Like, that sounds like a really fun recording right there, like that, because there's some playfulness in that one as well, right?
Oh, yeah. No, Bob totally, that was his moment, we did one. We've always had like, like the drummer always gets them on a on a Sebadoh record. Like there's always like everybody, when it comes to a Sebadoh record, that's like if there is a formula that we've had over the years, it's like everybody's going to say something on a Sebadoh record.
Yeah.
And I think Bob definitely he definitely had thought about it. He really figured out what would be the strongest way to use. I mean, I think that's almost every song too. I mean, the way that the record is, it's like I just feel like Jason and I and Bob, we really thought about what we were bringing to the table, and we were really trying to play on our bandmates' strengths, and we really, and it was focused. I'll just say that again.
Yeah.
Focused.
Well, so on the subjects of some of those songs, then, as we talked last year about Love Intervene, and you were tackling something, much bigger at that point than with choice and stuff like that. I'm always a little late to pick up on a lot of what's going on, but are you writing about anything in that style on this one? Because when I hear a song like Medicate, maybe, I sort of wondered how much of this is literal and how much of this, takes a wider scope? I mean,
well, I guess something like Love Intervene, I guess when I recorded that, it was I started off, I was it was going to be, it was a song that I had written on ukulele, which all of my songs on Act Surprise started on ukulele. So
Wow.
they kind of all started in the same way. Love Intervene was kind of the first of this batch of ideas that I had taken and kind of focused on. So, and then lyrically, it's a broader thing. It's I'm kind of I'm just weighing a lot of for lack of a better word, current issues, and just the vibe, going on, and coming out with songs. And that was the beginning. And certainly all these songs on Act Surprised are right on the heels of Love Intervene. But the regrets that I had about Love Intervene, were when I turned it into an electric song rather than an acoustic song, I was just a little bit behind it. I was I want this, I would have preferred, Love Intervene would have been a really great Sebadoh song too. It would have really worked out really well for us. So when I brought the songs from Act Surprise, I took all of the things that I kind of learned from the recording of Love Intervene and decided to really bring it down, with Jason and Bob, and because I was these guys could totally add a real fire to this stuff, and there should be, it should be really and all my songs are really on Act Surprise are very, very much from the same well of ideas and concepts that Love Intervene is, and something like Medicate is I don't know, it's a very personal song, but it's also extremely, it's it's kind of dealing with a lot of stuff, people, drug addiction, and this kind of I'm almost this in the selling of spirituality. Everyone's sort of shortcuts to peace of mind, and the way that's a really, and the profit generated by all that kind of stuff. That's what that song is about. It's directly addressing the opioid epidemic, and and just other stuff. I think it's pretty obvious if you sit down and look at the lyrics. But
yeah. I don't know if I'm taking it into a part that doesn't need to go in, but I thought, and there you were, in that last year where you were all tied up, having messed up your collarbone and everything, and I'm sure there was medication that went along to that, and that's when I started wondering if I was getting too literal, with it. And,
well, no, I have to say, they gave me a whole, they gave me a big old bottle of oxys, and I was okay, this is it. I guess this is where I find out whether I'm gonna go, whether this is my. But it was really interesting because that when I was on those, and I was really considering what pain was and really thinking about it and really, because I thought, I guess I was convinced that if I was ever reintroduced to oxys in my life, that I was going to have a really hard time letting it go. But during the midst of that thing, I finished it's funny because I came through that and I was wow, I guess I'm not really, opioids cover it up. And it's there's so much of people, God, there's all kinds of very intelligent people who have written very articulate things about it. But the science and the psychological things behind covering up pain and what pain is, it's worthwhile picking through what your personal relationship to pain is and how you're going to take care of it, and what's being prescribed and all that stuff. It's all very worthwhile to really kind of pick through that. And that song, at least the first verse of it, is kind of addressing my own thoughts about it. So.
I should bring up the first single too, because "Celebrate the Void" is instantly a favorite, and you wrote something about that I loved so much, and maybe it was in the same press release, but you said sometimes the walls are too high, but the resistance was always there, and there is no one answer, and that's okay. And I
Right.
thought that is such a perfect sentiment that should be said a lot right now, because I mean, the wider actuality of that, it is a very noisy world, and everyone seems to instantly be trying to have that answer in the 24-hour news cycle, and to pound away on that. It's like, and maybe we just don't have the answer right now, and that's okay.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. I mean, I guess because I'm also raising a teenager. My girl she turned 14 this year, and had a really, sort of concurrent with all this in this last year, and since my collarbone and all this other stuff, it's like she went through some pretty intense changes in her life. And as a parent, like you're struggling for this resolution, like, what's the resolution? How do we resolve this? And using my relationship with her and kind of like her development as a human, and as like sort of a microcosm, it's like, you know what, like this shit ain't going to be resolved. We are not going to resolve this. It's like this resolving something. It does seem to be something that we're striving towards all the time. But the reality is we don't actually resolve these things. They don't. I mean, they go to different plateaus. They might get better. They might get worse. And it's great to be engaged in the process of working towards these things. But unless you sort of open up your heart in some way during this, because I find, when I was in the midst of this, I mean, there was like this, you're like, I could feel myself tensing and becoming like, oh, I'm like, well, that's not going to work. Me trying to resolve this with this like crazy look on my face and my voice, and my voice going and, I'm yelling or whatever. It's like, this is not going to do it.
Right.
Just because I'm not seeing enough progress when I think I should be seeing it. It's like showing that kind of frustration is not going to help it. So in a lot of ways, it's like you do have to. It's like you got to step back and go, okay, well, it's all about this process, this continuous process of trying to make things better. But the reality being, at least the way it looks to me right now, is like I'm probably never going to come to any sort of major resolution about anything in my lifetime. There's never going to be a big answer. There's never going to be, there is no magic. There is no shortcuts to all. I mean, this also dovetails with like what we're talking about, like with Medicaid. And it's like there is no shortcut. Like you actually have to. It's all about this continuous process of like sorting through things, and the one thing that you can do in the middle of all of that is just be calm,
Right.
And I guess that's sort of the celebrate the void concept.
My boy is about to hit his teens. He's got another year, but he's about to hit his teens too. And in that little moment of what you were talking about right there, I'm already experiencing that a little bit. So it's
yeah.
I don't know how much you guys do with the anniversaries and everything. Do you pay any special attention to the Sebadoh with it being on its 20th anniversary on this tour? Do you guys kind of give any direction like that?
I was shocked that, I'm not being really hyperbolic when I say, like, when someone approached me when I got an email like, hey, so it's the 20th anniversary of the Sebadoh. What do you want? I'm like, what? Who the hell? I mean, it's like, it's not, I mean, that record, of course, is an important piece of my history and the history of the band, as important as that can be or whatever. But it's like, who cares? I don't know. Like, it's 20 years of a record that, like, I mean, I don't want to use the word nobody, but it was kind of like nobody liked it. I mean, and it's not true, obviously, because some people did, but it was like, I just think this anniversary mania that people have, I'm like, 50 years of a record. Hey, that's interesting. Like 15? No, not so much. 20? Not really. I don't know what it just means that, I mean, to sell, that's a real puzzler.
Yeah.
Like the anniversary concept is, Dinosaur Jr., I mean, like, we are all over that stuff. It's like, I'll constantly celebrate. It's a band. It's like this, I mean, a band that is truly just celebrating all of its little milestones. I'm like, I mean, it's fun when I do it, but but it just seems like a promotional tactic or something. I don't know.
No,
I don't really know.
It probably is. I would say it definitely is a promotional tactic. I'll also say for an interviewer, I do find it fun because, for me, there was a lot of those records. I mean, I grew up on those records, and I was definitely too young to have been, in the industry or have access to talking to my favorite artists or anything like that. So it's sort of been that concept of being able to kind of retake that moment, ask those questions, and I'm saying this as a completely personal thing. I'm obviously not speaking for the wider marketing scheme that goes along with all of this, but I can see, nostalgia is profitable, at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was surprised just because there is nobody. I think that this thing about the 20th anniversary of the Sebadoh seems to come from people who listen to the record who care about it. So that's kind of a nice thing. Because we sure didn't do it. I was in no hurry to remind anybody about. I guess to me, and especially the history of Sebadoh, it's like I've always wanted to look forward. Always, like I've never felt like the band had a definitive moment. I've never felt like we did our definitive record. There are definitely some things along the way where I'm like, well, that was cool, but I'm not a big one to do that, especially with a band like Sebadoh, because I feel like we have been, this record is the first one that I've done where I'm like, oh, this might be the best. This might be like the one where we really came together,
Yeah. It's the last word, maybe it's not, but it's one of the last words on the record. It's the word power, right? When in Reykjavik.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like that almost entirely sums up what you say right there. I mean, if it's not the last word, it's one of them. Like, that word says a lot, and especially with the way you all are kind of projecting it on there.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about it in terms of what the lyrics of that song are. I'm being really literal. I'm like, what? But
that's a fun song, by the way, and especially when that comes in. That's a left field moment in a song when you hear that pow, whatever. So it's.
I remember I did that. There's another song, my song Seesaw, where I kind of do the same thing, because there's a line like, another blood troll or another lost soul on a blood troll. And then when the blood, I'm like, I want blood troll to be like blood troll. Like everybody was looking at me like, are you sure you want to do that? Like, why do you want to? I'm like, no, fuck, man. Those are the moments, it's like, because if I look back at everything that I listen to, it's like, especially like in 60s music, 60s garage, psychedelic, it's like stuff like that. Really, I love that. You got to have that blood troll. And then that song, like Power, I'm like, no, we got to make that like comically, like, because it's actually a very lyrically important, both blood troll and power are like, those are like the lyrics like are kind of hinging on those words. So I'm like, yeah, let's just bring it out and make it like fun, because although I have to say the sentiments of both those songs are not fun at all and deadly serious, but it's like, I have like, just you gotta put a little candy in there, make it kind of fun.
A little levity, yeah. It does make the songs really super interesting beyond, I guess, what they might have regularly been.
Yeah, I was not interested. I wanted to go for the cheap hook. As basic as the record is at its core, I really like how we really captured the real sound of the band. It's a really natural sounding record, and it's not. We didn't, like I said, we didn't go in and nudge drum beats around or do anything like that, or any kind of like really overt editing of anything. But you're really prone to do the way that recording is these days with this digital recording. But we really treated the digital recording as an extension of analog, or just used it more or less like that. But when it came to something like that, it's like, oh, that's just, I want it to be. I know I've listened to enough music and there's to know what I like and what always perks my ears up. I'm like, I want to do some of that stuff this time.
Yeah.
I don't want to take this super ultra naturalistic approach to everything. That's all there. It's on the songs. But when it comes to like vocals and guitar parts, it's like have some, I'm going to try to actually have some fun with this time. So.
Yeah. I'm glad you did. I love it. I can't say enough good things about the record. It's
cool.
Do you are you going to be pulling double duty this year? It seems like you usually are in some way, at least.
Yeah, we always. Dinosaur. We're always trying to kind of keep it going. Just because Murph, our drummer, it's his primary job, or his only job actually. So we just try to do stuff to like kind of keep everybody, above water. So. we'll definitely do. There's definitely some Dinosaur Jr. things in the works, and then trying to give everything, all of my remaining energy to Sebadoh. Yeah.
Make for a fun year. I hope to catch some of it out there on the road. So
Yeah, we'll be out there.
all right, man. Well, thanks for the talk as usual. It's always lovely to catch up with you, Lou.
All right, thanks, Kyle.
All right, man. We'll see you around.
All right, bye.
Big ol' thanks to Lou Barlow. The new Sebadoh record is called Act Surprised. If you haven't already, before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening from right now, wherever you get your favorite podcasts from, or you can listen along on YouTube or Spotify. After that, you can head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern, where you can also find some bonus episodes of this series. ConsequenceOfSound.net. That's where you go for music and film news. You can find me at Twitter at Kyle Meredith and Facebook /Kyle Meredith. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.